that we can talk about the Egyptian revolution in the context of the cuts that are happening here. To some people it might seem like two very distant topics, but I think in a sense we are fighting for very similar things. Egyptian people and British people are fighting for possibilities, for a world with possibilities, and to put it that simply. I'm going to try and talk to you a little bit, just a personal account, of the revolution, and come back to this theme of alternatives and possibilities, and what the two movements, the uprising, the revolution uprising in Egypt, and the student movement and the movement against the cuts in here have in common. I always like, when people ask me to talk about the revolution, I always like to start on the day before the revolution, 24th at night, when I was talking to a friend who's another activist in Cairo, and I was arguing about something, and he's like, Dina, tomorrow is the revolution, stop talking about this. I'm like, yeah, revolution, right, We've been going out on the streets, campaigning like for the past at least 5 years since the Enough movement, Kifaya movement. And we've been getting numbers that are like 500 people, 1,000. The largest we had seen was like 17,000, and it was during the bombings of the church on Christmas Eve. So to even to us, this was something that's very surprising, and there is something about the ability to surprise your own self as well, not just the world, but your own self. And so I spent the first week here mobilizing and doing international solidarity, and then it was time to go to Egypt. The fight was getting intense. And I remember when I arrived there, I was thinking, okay, so there's a revolution, and I had this idea that when I'll go there, everything would have been changed. Right? It was still in the middle of it. And I had this idea that the buildings' colors will change, just like things changing on Christmas time or something like that. And I arrived, and everything seemed very normal. Life seemed like life as usual. But then on the cracks of it, you could see the revolution, and I think this is the key, because sometimes you look at our societies and we think, oh, okay, that's just one more meeting where we're going to talk about the cuts and then, go out on another demonstration. But then it's really in the small parts that you can see how something can change so rapidly and change a society completely with it. So the first thing that made me realize that the revolution was going on was that I saw just a young man who was managing the traffic. Just because the police had gone away and basically left us to kind of burn in hell. So basically, people started having, creating the alternatives themselves. Well, there's nobody to manage the traffic, we'll do it ourselves. Arriving near my house, again, I found like a group of people sitting together, which my brother then explained to me was like, these are one of the popular committees that just erupted to protect the streets. A week ago, these people never knew each other, and you see them today, you think, they've been friends forever, including class, so Egypt is a very strict place where classes are really, it's quite segregated. And then you would see, porters sitting with the young men of the building, and in a sense, it's these moments, where you create the alternatives, and alternative ways of associating yourselves to the others, which are at the essence of revolutions and movements and uprisings. Again, small things, because everybody's been talking about Tahrir, and the revolution is not just Tahrir. The revolution is, although there is so much that happened there that symbolizes the revolutionary processes and values we want. But it's this everywhere, every street, how life has changed suddenly, because people have realized that there is an alternative world out there, and we can be part of that alternative world. It's as simple as that. We spent our lives studying revolutions, we spent our lives being active on the streets, but then the minute it happens, it comes down to this very simple thing that changes your life, and it's understanding that another alternative world is possible, and I think it's these alternatives that the David Camerons of the world and the Mubaraks of the world and the Nick Cleggs of the world tell us are not possible. They tell us they know how it works. They tell us they know the finances. They tell us they know how the real world works. And the whole power of our movement, whether in Egypt or in here, is to put forth another alternative. And in putting forth an alternative, I want to stress that it's an alternative, right? Because what happens now, whether in Egypt or here, is that even people dictate to us what alternatives they think we should follow. So at least to us in Egypt, everybody's like, oh, so now it's time for the liberal democracy model. No, it's time for an alternative world. And we will choose what alternative world means. It's the same thing here, everybody who puts forth, populist left comes back and like, it's time for the big state to come back. Well, sure, some aspect, but there's also time for an alternative space where the associations that are being created today, in every occupation, in every teach-in, in every demonstration, can make us really work on a different process, on a real revolutionary process. So to talk about a revolution is not to copy someone else's model, and it's not to copy in time as well. I mean, every time I say something about the revolution, somebody's like, yeah, this is exactly what happened, in the Russian Revolution between February and October. Like, it's very good to be, historically aware, but it's also good to not limit yourself to these alternatives and to think, a little beyond what's happening. So people have talked about, like, the student movement dying after the vote in December, and that it's done, and now we're just fighting for the cuts. The point is that this fight is beyond the cuts, and it's beyond the vote. It's a fight, really, in essence, for another society, for a different society. It's also a question of whether education is, a middle class luxury, or education, a way for the working class to get themselves trained up to the post-industrial world, or education, as we often argue, no, it's just education for itself. No, it's actually redefining education for redefining a new world that we are building. And we need to do that by breaking the institutions that have the old values in them. And I'm very happy every time we have free schools setting up, occupations, teach-ins. It's just deconstructing these old institutions that have owned the hegemony over the values we live by, and creating the new values we really think we ought to be living by. I don't know how much time we still have. Yeah, so I mean, in a sense, I know everybody wants to hear about Tahrir as usual, but I'll bring Tahrir in the context of what I'm talking about. So a revolution, I think, when we call it a revolution, we miss the point, and I prefer much more a revolutionary process, right? Because this is an ongoing project, whether it's for us back in Egypt, or for you here, or for everybody in the world. And the process is about taking the values that we establish in one place and sharing them on a wider level. In Tahrir, just camping there, honestly, I've fought all my life for revolutions. I never understood what a revolution, how powerful a revolution is, except by being there, seeing how people, for the first time ever in our lives, we see ourselves. I mean, this is the value of a revolution. It's not just about creating change, it's a place where, for the first time, we're allowing ourselves to see difference. Of course, here it's a more diverse place, but I wonder, if we really are as diverse here, because in a sense, we're all accepting each other, but we kind of not give ourselves the space to have the exchange with one another. We still, the middle class is still shop at specific supermarkets, the working class is at other supermarkets. I mean, there is still the shift. So it was a space where we saw each other for the first time. It was a space where we self-organized beyond the state. And not in a, I hope, for God's sake, not in a big society kind of fashion, yeah? David Cameron would be like, see, that's it, this is what I'm talking about. No, but in a way where you really, this is different, it's not about them owning the main parts of the state and leaving us to manage, the little parts. It's about living without a state, and that's what Tahrir was about, whether the way we organized food, we had our own prison, our own front yard with people from the historically Suez Governorate, which are known to have fought all the wars on our fronts, the ones actually protecting the front of Tahrir and sleeping under the tanks. So there was really this sense of self-management, even in, and I always like to mention that, even in queuing for going into the loo. This is a place where we never queued for anything, okay? In a sense, we knew that it didn't matter, and whoever was stronger just got in, not even for a bus. And suddenly, in that place, we were queuing for the loo, and with a very even a little fascist organization kind of way. You had to say whether you were going for a piss or a poo. And the man regulating was like, 4 piss, 2 poo, please get your, I'm not kidding you, please get off your belts before and after you go in so we can save time. And I was like, my God, what is this, And people, and I can overhear people inside the loo still discussing constitutional amendments. But that's the power of it, that suddenly when you feel that you can do it, that you own it, that you own the alternative world, it takes over you in a way that's fantastic, that appears in every bit of your life. And I think this is where I want to end. I mean, even for Egypt, this is our struggle now to make sure that this revolutionary process continues, that we're not hijacked by people who are saying, oh, now we've done that, this was just the revolutionary moment, now it's real politics. Absolutely not. I mean, the whole point is to continue to say that we stick to this alternative world. And I think it's the same question, same essence here. The movement has not died, the movement is not just one protest, the movement is not one teaching. It's a new society that we are working for.